great to have you here on the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. You know, if you've listened to this show for a long time, you know that most of us buy used cars, not new, and buying a used car is hazardous to your wallet because you don't always know what you're buying. There are so many pitfalls you got to know, that individual vehicle you're looking at, but also the model, the make. Is it one that's going to be likely to cause you a lot of problems or whatever? I'm going to talk about that ahead. And there's real opportunity right now around the country for renters to lower their rent. And I want to talk about how to do that the right way and what to watch out for so you don't end up overpaying for your place. So, as you know, a lot of people found themselves having to buy much older used vehicles when the shortage of used vehicles pushed the prices way up. Average cost of a used vehicle during COVID went from 17 grand to peaking out at 29 grand, and now has come back down significantly. But, you know, having a vehicle with a lot of miles on it is rough because, you know, they wear out with time. But the great news is vehicles do last a whole lot longer than they used to. It's not at all unusual for a vehicle to hit 200,000 miles and not have had a lot of problems in those first 200,000. And then there are others that could be a real problem. So, you know, we got to stretch every dollar. And Consumer Reports is one of the most important places for you to go before you even start to look for a used vehicle of any kind, truck, SUV, car, whatever, to look and see what are the records of repair on various models that you are naturally interested in. But Consumer Reports took all their data recently and did something they have never done before. They specifically, because of people keeping cars longer, and the average age of a vehicle in the United States is now somewhere between 13 and 14 years, longest it's ever been. So people are buying older used cars. Consumer Reports took their database and they crunched numbers on 5-year-old and 10-year-old used vehicles to try to get a feel for what stays reliable over time. And the data is so clear that I just had to share it with you. One brand has two brand names, but one brand in older used cars was by far and away the most reliable. Toyota and its sister brand Lexus. And I'm telling you, nothing's close to those two in terms of reliability of vehicles that are 5 to 10 years old. So when you're looking at a vehicle, you're trying to buy an older one, starting there is the safest choice. But just because overall Toyota/Lexus are by far the most reliable once they've got a lot of age on them, it doesn't mean the individual vehicle you're looking to buy is going to be any good at all, because we're playing averages here. And particularly as a vehicle gets age on it, it becomes essential that as part of the purchase you have it checked out by an independent mechanic of your choosing to see what kind of shape that individual vehicle is in. And if you want to look for something that depreciates faster, that still gets good reliability, it's going to be Mazda and Honda are the two that they're behind by a decent amount Toyota, but Honda, Acura, and Mazda. Acura is just the label for the fancier versions of Hondas. Those two brands are the ones that you're going to find are going to be cheaper with age and mileage than you're going to find the Toyota and Lexus products, and still get decent reliability ratings. Now I'm going to do the hard part. I'm going to tell you the brands that ranked the worst overall on reliability in the age of 5 to 10 years. Ford, Kia, Chevy, Hyundai, Audi, and Volvo. Everybody else kind of in between, but far and away again, Lexus, Toyota, and then behind them, but still pretty good, you got Honda, Acura, Mazda. And remember, there's a lot involved in buying a used car than just me giving you a brand name from a list.
Yeah.
I work so hard at making sure we give you the best information possible on buying a used car, and we have a guide that we continually update at Clark.com, starting with knowing you're good for the money first.
Definitely. Okay, this first question is from Alex in Virginia. You always recommend getting pre-approved.
Oh, there we go.
Getting pre-approved from a regional bank or credit union before going to the dealer, but I've heard very little about how to actually close the deal and pay the dealer once the deal's reached, and you've been pre-approved by your bank or credit union. How do I get my pre-approval amount to the dealer and keys in hand from the dealer to leave with the vehicle?
Okay, wonderful question. All right, so Alex, the way this plays is depending on the small bank or the credit union you deal with, they may give you a draft for an amount of money that they have pre-approved you for, a draft kind of like a check, and it will have an amount that is the maximum amount they will lend you on a vehicle. Other times what will happen is you'll pre-approve with a credit union or a small bank, and then you'll make a deal with the dealer, and you go back to the credit union or small bank, and they issue you the draft for that exact amount of money, usually made out to that dealer. It's done both ways. More commonly is the second way. What I'm really surprised about is I'm not hearing that things have gone electronic where the credit unions or the small banks are just sending the money electronically directly to the dealer. There's now a process called FedNow that means that it goes instantly, and the car dealers will know the money is completely valid, but old habits die hard in banking, and it's not a common way for it to be done.
Luke in California says, after reading the breakdown of your 3 favorite children in the article, it said you have investments at all 3. I'm just curious why that is. What are the advantages in doing that? Also, if Fidelity had Fidelity zero-fee index funds, why wouldn't everyone just invest in that for a total stock market fund?
Okay, so Lucas, here's the deal. My very first discounter I was with back in the 1970s was Fidelity Investments, 1970s, early 80s. And I was with Fidelity for a long time. And truthfully, I don't even remember why I migrated from Fidelity to Schwab. And then Vanguard, I started with long ago. And Vanguard was kind of a unique animal out there. They were offering these ultra low cost index fund products that were rare as could be in the marketplace, now totally common. And so I was doing, Schwab is where I would own, back then I used to buy individual stocks and mutual funds, and I was using it also as the equivalent of my bank. And I was using Vanguard for more and more of my investing. So that was really what I was doing. Well, the weird thing that happened was I had a form of an annuity from 40 years ago that I had at Vanguard, and Vanguard got out of that business, and Fidelity was the best place to move it to. This kind of like wounded duck out there, this kind of orphan annuity, because I'm not an annuity fan, but there were special circumstances that existed in investing 40 years ago that's where the money was. So that's why now I'm with all three of my favorite children. Otherwise, I would just be with two. On your question about the Fidelity Zero funds, they are a fantastic product, minimum $1 to put into them. And Fidelity is, I guess, in perpetuity, absorbing all the costs of providing those index funds to investors.
Usman in California says, I get my credit score once a month. From Chase, they report my score is 823, and from Experian. And then from Bank of America, my score is going down. Last month, they reported 786. Should I be worried?
Would not be worried. So, Usman, what happens is the scores you see from the various banks are based on different scoring models, maybe even different credit bureaus. So there's always going to be differences between them that could be in the dozens of points. What you're looking for with the credit score you're getting from BOA that's 786 is you want to see your trends over time. And they probably have a trend chart where when you look at credit scores on the Bank of America website, you'll see the BOA chart will show you, up, down, up, down, up, down. It's the direction that matters. The fact that they're pulling from maybe a different credit bureau than Chase is, they may be using a different scoring model. They may, one or the other of them, may be using the FACO score, the Vantage score, which is not the, I guess you'd call the semi-official credit score, which is FICO. There's nothing wrong with the FACO scores from Vantage. It's just they're not as respected by lenders as the scores you get from Fair Isaac, the FICO score. But it's the trend that's your friend or enemy. Your score, either of your scores, put you in what's known as golden territory. You're just fine unless the trend line is headed steadily down. And they'll tell you, excess amount of debt right now or whatever that may have led your trend lower. I find that the Vantage scores are much more variable than the FICO scores. The Vantage scores give so much emphasis on what the balance is, even almost day by day, and it can cause huge gyrations in your score in very short periods of time. But most people would be ecstatic that their bad score is 786. Coming up ahead, I want to talk about something that was really bad, ugly, that has turned favorable for you as a consumer, the cost of rent, if you choose to get the better deals. Free enterprise is the system I love because of how people react to market conditions, who put their money at risk and create more of whatever if they think they can make a lot of money. And that's exactly what's happened with apartments and homes for rent in the United States. Rents went up so much that apartments became a big, big profit center for investors. And what did investors do all over the country when they saw the opportunity to make a lot of money? They managed to create conditions that now they're making less money than they thought, maybe even losing money in some cases. Apartments went up willy-nilly pretty much all over the country, except in certain cities, Boston, New York, where there's not a lot of land available. But pretty much everywhere else, apartment construction has been enormous. And we're going to have an era that will become something that people will recognize for maybe the next 50, 80, 100 years, the 5/1. We are in the era of the 5/1. It is a method of apartment construction that has taken over apartment building because it's relatively quick, efficient, and lower cost to build. They build the first floor is poured concrete. The next 5 floors are wood structure. And that's why if you're at a red light and you see a new apartment complex by you, don't be surprised if you count up floors and it's the base concrete and then 5 additional floors, because that is this era's efficient method of building apartments. So the efficiency of being able to build them and the number of people who did so, the amount of billions and billions that poured into this, they overbuilt. And so now, even though these 5/1s were all geared towards the higher end of the market, what happened was there's so much new inventory of apartments that it effectively has pushed down rents in almost every metro area in the country if you shop for them. Most people who rent are already in a place, right? You're not going out looking for your first apartment. So you're an incumbent where you are. And the apartment complex where you are, or apartment building where you are, when your renewal comes up, they're going to use every mind trick possible to try to get you to renew with them and not shop around. So I read a good while back in the one of the Am-City business journals that the hot trick in the apartment business was to offer you rewards of some kind from a catalog or points or prizes to get you to renew, to get you to stay there if you pay your rent on time and all that. And they use this as kind of like, squirrel, squirrel, squirrel. Take your eye off of what you should be looking at. You know, when you're looking at the squirrel instead of looking ahead. That's what they're trying to do with the apartments, is get people that are already in an apartment to, it's a hassle to move anyway, to do mind tricks on you with these very menial prizes or cash back or gift cards or whatever to get you to renew and get you to stay at above what now is market rent. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for the whole prize thing. What you want the prize to be is that your effective rent is lower. And if you will shop around when renewal comes up, what you're going to find in most any metro area in the country, and there are exceptions, but pretty much this is a thing happening from sea to shining sea, is that you get out there and you shop apartments starting about 10 to 6 weeks out. You see what others are offering, and you'll see free rent offers, you'll see special deals, and a lot of the yield management software now is no longer offering standard 6-month leases or 12-month leases. They're using mathematical formulas, algorithms, say, okay, it's going to be really good for us if we get somebody to sign a 14-month lease. So if you sign a 14-month lease, we'll give you this many months of free rent or whatever. You want to shop the market. You want to be aware of the flexibility that's going to be involved and how long or short a lease you sign in order to get the best deal, because the market is your friend right now if you do the work. Why did I say 10 to 6 weeks? Some people are in leases that require notice 60 days out. Otherwise, your lease automatically extends either month to month or renewal, depending on the laws in the state where you are. So that's why you may have to do this shopping further out than you really are prepared to.
Okay, we'll go to questions. Jonathan in Florida says, I've been listening to your show for many years now. With your help, I was able to alleviate 33 bad debts and 3 car repos. My credit score is now an 803.
Wow.
I've been trying to save money for a down payment on a home. I'm up to $4,000. I know it isn't a lot, but it's a start. Should I do the 0% down, 3% FHA, or try and save 20%? My budget for a house is around $250,000. I've been wondering about interest rates as well. I see where they're going to attempt 3 different lowering points this year. I'm reading it will be for 0.25 points, for a quarter point. Should I wait a year or two and continue to save?
So, Jonathan, I'm so glad you asked the question like you did. And let me start with the first thing. Congratulations to you on having basically financial Armageddon in your life and working through all of it, rehabbing your standing credit-wise, getting all those things taken care of, and now you have a credit score over 800.
What a comeback.
I think this is important to you if you're watching or listening and you feel just helpless, you feel overwhelmed, that many times, you bite off one little bite at a time, and you can conquer, so often you can conquer a series of debt ills. And I hope that Jonathan's story is an inspiration to you. Now, the thing that Jonathan said that specifically I wanted to mention, the quarter point cuts by the Federal Reserve. Mortgage rates are only at best normally indirectly influenced by the Federal Reserve. We were in an unusual cycle after the banking scandals that led to the Great Recession and all the foreclosures and the high unemployment and all that. Federal Reserve did a number of extraordinary measures to force down not just short-term interest rates, but also long-term interest rates like mortgages. So we had an abnormal cycle of extremely low mortgage rates. Federal Reserve isn't doing that kind of manipulation anymore. So mortgage rates are only tangentially related to what happens with what the Federal Reserve does with the interest rates they control, which are the short-term rates. Why are mortgage rates dropping? Because inflation has come under control. And so investors who are having to put money at risk for 10 to 30 years are no longer demanding the interest rates they are on 10 to 30-year money because they're not having to discount so much the value of the money that they're lending because of inflation. So that's why mortgage rates are trending down, regardless of the Federal Reserve hadn't cut any interest rates at all yet, and mortgage rates have dropped by a meaningful amount. So don't let that be, the Federal Reserve cuts have an effect on what you do about when you get a mortgage. The problem with taking out, I don't like the zero down loans. I would just ignore those. The FHA loan, what's the problem with it? Putting 3% down. If interest rates drop later, it may limit your ability to refi into a lower rate because you're going to miss the whole conventional market because you won't have enough equity in that home. But it is okay. The big problem is if you don't intend to own the home a long time, you are in a position where you have so little equity built up over time, especially starting out with a 30-year loan with only 3% down. So if you intend to own this home for a good long time, go with the lower down payment, get in that home. If you don't know that you have long-term intentions of living in whatever home you buy, then I want you to save more money, put in a more substantial down payment.
Seth in Indiana says, I'm going back to college for a second degree, and FAFSA loans won't cover my total tuition cost as there is a lifetime limit, and I used a good chunk for my first degree. I'm saving as much as I can, but if I have to take out some private loans, what are companies to avoid and companies that have a good reputation? Also, my plan would be to aggressively tackle any private loans after graduation and pay them off first while making minimum payments on the federal loans.
So, Seth, there is no honor roll of good private student loan lenders, let me tell you. They are generally a hated bunch. So what you're looking for with you having to take out private loans is you're looking for ones that offer you a fixed rate. If you go in a floating rate loan on those private loans, and you're not able to pay back on an accelerated rate like you believe, you're facing a lot of uncertainty with interest rates continually resetting. It is true, though, that the borrowing rates you can get on the private student loans will be directly reflected in what I was just talking about with the Federal Reserve with their interest rate cuts, where the mortgage rates aren't affected, the student loan rates are. So there's an argument to be made that there's an advantage going into floating rates on those because the rate will float down. I'd say the biggest way you make the decision between fixed rate and floating rate on a private student loan is the payment cycle that you realistically believe you will be able to pay those private loans down to zero. If it's going to take you more than 5 years from when you complete this degree, you're best off being in fixed rates. If it's going to be a cycle where you think with near certainty you will be able to pay off those loans within 60 months, almost like taking out a vehicle loan, that you'll be able to pay them off within 5 years of your graduation, then it's okay to go floating rate, particularly if the rate is 1 interest point lower or more from the fixed rate. You let the cost of originating the student loan and the interest rates control who you go to. That's really, unfortunately, how you decide which private student loan lender is, let's call them, least bad. And gosh, that was a negative way to end, but we are talking about student loans here. So I hope you have a great, great rest of your day. We look forward to you being with us tomorrow and know what we're all about. You learning ways to save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off.